Let's get spooky. This is our Station Boo, where we explore the dark and mysterious corners of the world of horror, and we know that you are dying to listen.
Welcome to the Kooky and Spooky podcast of Earth Station Boo, where we talk all things horror. Introducing our haunted hosts, we have Lisa.
Hi, everybody.
We have Karen.
What's up, my horroraholics?
I am Shannon. In this episode, we're actually extremely fortunate to actually get to talk to the lovely author, Samantha Curtin.
Hey, horroraholics, it's time for the Ghastly Report. All the fun, spine-tingling news happening in horror today. Come on, let's get spooky.
Hey, spooky friends. There are a couple things that we have going on. For those people who love to collect toys, NECA just came out with a 4-foot-tall Megan. Yes, it is that creepy. Also, for the Hammer lovers out there, they have also come out with a very nice collectible of Christopher Lee as Dracula.
Ooh.
Very spectacular. Also, some new streaming movies have come out, including this week's launch is the Netflix movie Under Paris. And we also have a new Korean horror movie, if you like that kind of stuff, which I do. It's called Exuma. It was held in some limited theaters in March in the United States, but it's coming to Amazon. And I think it's also coming to Peacock.
Ooh.
We also have another one called Insane Like Me, which is more like a little bit of a serial killer thing. And it's coming to Paramount and Amazon. Also, we have The Hangman, which there's no trailer, so I'm not really sure what it is, but as soon as I find the trailer, I'll post it for you. It's coming on Tubi, which Tubi has a lot of good horror movies. Also, Shudder will be having that new serial killer movie that just came out of a violent nature. It will be on Shudder in a month. So you guys, it didn't last in the theaters very long, but it will be on Shudder streaming, so you guys can enjoy that. We also have another thing called Trim Season, which is coming out on Paramount, and it looks pretty good. And those are the straight new horror movies that are coming out to streaming.
Cool. Karen, do you have any literature stuff for us?
There are some books that are coming out this month. Kind of scrounged around a little bit to find some. And please forgive me if I butcher their names, because, I just was looking around the internet, finding some stuff that came out this month. So we have a book called Brat by Gabriel Smith. It's his debut novel, and it'll be the first horror books that you probably want to pick up this month. I haven't get to read it yet. I have it on my list. I have lots of to be read. Next up is Youth Juice by E.K. Chateau, Cuckoo by Gretchen Martin, Horror Movie by Paul Tembley, One of Our Kind by Nicola Yon, Craft, Stories I Wrote for the Devil by Ananda Lima. That sounds like an interesting one. I might have to pick that one up and read. We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kellaware. The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. That sounds interesting. Yeah. Incidents Around the House by Josh Millerman.
I like the cover on that one.
Incidents Around the House?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does look really interesting. Because, I live in a basement, so a lot of strange noises you hear down here when you're in the basement. So I might have to put that one on my list too, since I have a lot. And that's what I was able to find. There's some other books coming out, so I'll post that up on our Facebook group chat. And some horror authors actually recommended some picks, so I'll also post that as well.
Awesome.
Perfect. Thank you so much, ladies, for giving us all that fun information. And don't forget, our lovely guest, Sam, her book released on June 7th, and it's Over the River and Through the Woods. All right. So I met Sam at Dragon Con in like 2015, 2016 through a friend, Jody. We were just outside of the Weed and Track Room at the Sheraton, which is not even called that anymore, and there isn't even a Weed and Track Room anymore. We've actually done a few Dragon Cons together. We're both Scorpios, which I think is really, really cool. And we love all things spooky. And honestly, it's been a pleasure to know Sam over the past few years. And I'm really excited that I was able to invite her to come on and be part of this podcast. But is there anything else you would love to tell our listeners about yourself?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I've been into horror since I was 6 years old. And from there, it just blossomed into just an obsession and got into writing, and horror became even more of an obsession when it came to actually getting to create my own villains, my own characters,
Mm-hmm.
spill all the weird things that are in my mind onto paper and to have people read them is awesome. And that's what I really strive to do. I want to get in people's brains. I want to make them think about things differently, and I want to scare them. That's really my goal in life.
Rock on, rock on. So since this is a horror podcast, what is your favorite thing about horror? Like, what do you love most about it?
So I love this idea of the other, and that's what really drew me to horror in the beginning. And, we talk a lot about queerness in horror and how it kind of goes hand in hand, because being a queer woman myself, I found solace in horror and that other that's out there, and really found a space that I could be myself and feel connected to something that wasn't just something that was kind of out there and more taboo. There was people that were into horror. Reading Stephen King was my first kind of foray into horror literature. First horror movie was The Exorcist. So that paranormal horror, demons, that kind of stuff, I really found kind of a footing and a comfort in a weird way. I always joke that to comfort myself with my anxiety, I have PTSD and general anxiety disorder, and horror is my comfort. I will watch it on the plane when I'm freaked out. I will watch it when I'm going through an anxiety attack, because it, once again, is that other that's out there, and it makes me feel connected to that other.
That's awesome. What else about this genre do you just absolutely adore?
So I love how you can take an idea or something that's going on in the world and just hyperbolize it. That's what I do in my own writing a lot, is I take things that I'm dealing with and just make it gory and grotesque and just so hyperbolized that it almost becomes kind of campy in the same respect of it. That's why I love body horror. Body horror is one of my favorite genres, because you get to go that other to the other and be so kind of out there and just grotesque. And I just love it. And I know, in talking to my friends who aren't really into horror, they don't get it. It's kind of hard to explain to them why I'm so drawn to it.
So what would be your favorite horror movie or body horror movie?
My favorite body horror, oh, man, it's hard to pick just one.
You can pick a couple, because none of us can ever pick one, and we end up like naming like 6 or 7, and the episode ends up being like an hour and a half long, because that's what we end up doing.
That's so true.
Yeah. The Fly was my first foray into Cronenberg and that body horror, but Slither is like probably my go-to when it comes to body horror.
That's a good one.
My husband's name is Grant, and so I jokingly call him Grant when I first met him, because that was like the only other Grant that I knew. And I actually he got me a piece of a monster for my birthday last year. It was like one of those like sales that they have where you can buy like horror merch. So, and I also love sci-fi. So to combine that, horror and sci-fi. So those are probably my 2 favorite like body horror movies.
So what's your thought on Human Centipede?
So I liked what it was trying to do. I really did. But it just went too far with it, I think. And to a point that it wasn't even good. It was just gross for the sake of being gross, if that makes sense. At least that's my take on it.
Yeah.
Did you see the other 2?
I did. So I never tried to like rag on things unless I read them or seen them. So I tried to watch things that maybe I don't really like, and I really didn't like any of them. But I tried. There.
I mean, so I watched them when I was working at the blood bank, and one of my coworkers, she just was completely grossed out by it. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. And I found out that there was 2 other films that they made, essentially, a trilogy. And so I would tell her all about both of them, because I was like, I have to watch these and I have to traumatize her. Every time she comes down, I'm like, and you know that they did like 100 guys in a row, right? She's
Yeah, I
just like,
remember
stop telling me these things.
I remember watching it in my parents' basement when I come back from college. Remember FearNet? I'm not sure if you
Yeah.
guys remember that channel. And it was like on demand. And I watched the two in like a row. And I remember my dad walking down going, what the hell are you watching? And then I had to explain it to him. And then he's like, in the Catholic, Irish, he just walked back upstairs. Like, I'm not. No.
He's like, I can't deal with this right now.
So ironically, he's the reason that I'm into horror because he showed me The Exorcist when I was 6. So
There you go. At least you had a parent like introduce it to you. I'm the weirdo who just fell in love with it, and my parents are like, why? We can't watch this stuff. How are you watching this? So with your love of horror, and you mentioned your writing, how did you get into writing as an art form for you?
So my first foray into writing was actually first grade. I wrote this like puppet show about like pigs and cats, as you do when you're 6 years old. And I know it's gonna make sense. And so at the end of the year, my first grade teacher was obsessed with pigs. And so we got t-shirts that I'm a pigtastic something at the end. So people got like, I'm a pigtastic baseball player. I'm a pigtastic whatever. I'm a pigtastic author. And I still have that shirt. Does not fit even a little bit, obviously. But ever since then, I was like, hey, I'm going to be an author. And it's funny because I went to a very Christian school, by the way. So when my first grade teacher found out what I write, she was like, oh, okay, cool. But was very proud of me and that I actually did pursue that. I started formally actually writing books in 9th grade after reading The Scarlet Letter. I know that's not really what you think of when you think of horror, but The Scarlet Letter to me was a horror book. It was about witches, and it was about the other, and it was about being an outcast and the woods being a place of darkness.
And I mean, as a woman, that time period was a horrific time.
Exactly. Really got into learning about Puritan culture and like how they tortured people, how they had these different rules of punishment, how they Salem witch trials, all that stuff really got me into, hey, I'm gonna write something about this. And that's actually what inspired my Summer's Hollow series, which didn't come out until 2012, until after college, but I started writing it in 9th grade. So that was really my first like actual sitting down and writing something was from The Scarlet Letter.
Well, hey, everything starts someplace, and like a fine wine, it just builds.
Since you were talking about like, the Puritan horror, I know a few years ago, The Witch came out about, so what are your thoughts on that? Like,
yeah, I really enjoyed that movie a lot. It was a little different, and a lot of the A24 films are kind of like, they try to be cerebral just to be cerebral, and I don't. So yeah, I did love the kind of nod back to Puritan times. And I love that time period because things were very simple. You didn't have technology to kind of mess up the horror feel to it. And it really feels kind of that grittiness. I'm not sure if you guys seen Fear Street, but the last movie or episode, whatever they call it, on Fear Street was very similar to that as well. And that comes through in my writing in my Summer's Hollow series. It takes place in present day, but it kind of goes back and forth from that Puritan times to present day. And so I really like kind of the tone of The Witch and ultimately the tone of some of my books that I write.
Rock on. So do you get anything out of the writing process?
I do. I joke it's my therapy, and in addition to actual therapy, obviously. But it's, as I talked to earlier, it's a way to kind of get the noise in my head onto paper and to hyperbolize things. Full disclosure, I've gone through a lot of trauma in my life, unfortunately, with some sexual assault and lost a baby. And there's just a lot that I have to work through. And horror is the perfect way to work through it. And sometimes that seems so awful to some people. And trying to explain that, sometimes people are like, okay, well, that's great. But I can really work through things when I'm creating these characters. I get to control them. My poor characters, I put them through so much. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry.
I don't think you're the only author that does that. They're like,
yeah,
I want to put you in a situation like I didn't.
Can we just reference George R.R. Martin, who kills almost every character?
I'll say I don't kill my characters. I just put them in really shitty situations and cause them lots of trauma that they then have to deal with because they're still alive. So probably the biggest example of that is in my Summer's Hollow series. There's 3 books, and it kind of follows the whole small town horror. Second book is you go back to the small town horror, and then third is kind of the prequel to the small town horror. And my poor character just kind of going through it with each book. And I'm like, oh, poor Riley. I'm sorry. But then no, because it sells books. So.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Happy characters don't sell books.
No, they get a little on the boring side. Obviously, we know that you love combining horror and writing, and that it's been extremely cathartic for you. What other things do you think are kind of cool and fun about combining those two things for you as a individual?
So I think a lot of horror movies or even books that I read, I'm like, oh, maybe I didn't really like that ending, or maybe I could have done that better. And I have a chance to do that with my own writing. I can take those weird images that I have in my head that I imagined in books or when books are turned into movies. And I'm like, I didn't like that. I get a chance to do it myself. And it's a chance to get all those grotesque things that I think other horror fans will like onto those pages and into their own brains. And I get a weird kind of satisfaction doing that. Like when people tell me, oh, you gave me nightmares, or hey, I can't stop thinking about that one scene in your book. Like, it makes me giddy. But once again, it also is that cathartic piece to it that is really helpful when it comes to getting all the thoughts in my head onto paper, and to make sure that other people can understand maybe what I'm going through, maybe help someone else too. There's always a message behind my writing. I don't just write gory things to write gory things. Mm-hmm. There's always a point behind everything I write, because that's a pet peeve of mine when people, like with Human Centipede, it was gross just to be gross. I'm gross for a point, at least trying to do something. So,
besides writing horror, is there any other genre that you write in?
Yes, I actually do write crime drama as well, which in itself is kind of horror. I have a series that takes place in New York City that I wrote in the height of COVID, because I was seeing all these like just injustice going on. I was like, I really want to do something. And to me, I write. That's my thing. That's what I do. So I wrote this kind of like crime legal drama about a cop that has PTSD going through this process of learning that her partner was a rapist and kind of dealing with that. And another way to get my own, issues, once again, like I said, traumatizing my characters. But I do like the crime drama, genre as well. And I love when crime and horror kind of collide. I have a lot of friends who are writers who write a lot of like horror crime novels, and that's really cool. And I would love to be able to do that sometime. It's kind of one of the next projects that I'm hopefully working on for 2025.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty awesome.
Horror and crime drama.
What inspired you to get into crime drama as well as horror?
I'm a sucker for procedural cop dramas. I know, like the whole propaganda stuff, but like I love Law and Order SVU. I love The Rookie. I love a lot of those crime dramas out there, because with procedural shows, it's what's going to happen. Like it's very kind of beginning, and I liked that structure, and that's how I kind of got into writing my own. I also wanted to do something that was very queer, and I see there's not a lot of queer crime dramas out there, so I created a very queer character. My second book in the series, I think I counted about 8 queer characters that I have, which is the most that I've written. So it was a chance to flex that the crime drama bone, but also to throw out these kind of queer and also people of color into because that's another thing that I don't see a lot. You're seeing more of it now, and some of the newer shows that are out there. But I wanted to kind of change the genre a little bit as much as I could.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Dun dun dun. Sorry.
So tell us about the books that you have written. It's kind of one of the main reasons that we have you on, because you have a new book coming out, but we would love to hear about some like the older stuff going all the way to and ending with this newest one that is releasing.
Sure. So I started out writing more short horror, short kind of like fantasy, paranormal horror. I have this one that was called The Cell, and it kind of took place in this like fantasy land, but it was still very much horror. And I released it on Kindle. I wrote a follow-up called Dark Cell that I also released on Kindle, mostly because it's not as much money in capital to me to go to just Kindle versus printing books. I am self-published. I tried to go the route of going to a publishing company. And at the time in 2011, 2012, horror hadn't really kicked off yet, if that makes any sense. I think there was this really big boom around 2015, 2016. But prior to that, it was really hard for horror writers to kind of break the mold.
Yeah, we're kind of in like a renaissance at the moment.
So I decided, heck, I'm just going to do it myself then. So it was a lot of trial and error, I'll be honest. So there, like my early stuff isn't great. It's there. It's still, people read it. But it's a little bit more, it's my beginning stuff. It's a little rough.
If it helps. I had an art teacher, and he always told us this at the beginning of like a semester, whatever. Even if your art is shit's still fertilizer. And so even if you were like, I hate my painting, he's like, well, what do you like about it? And he always helped us like break it down that even if it was a piece that we hated and we thought it was complete garbage, he's like, yeah, just throw it in the compost heap, learn from it, do something better.
Yeah, I hate my paintings, but I know that, the more practice I do, the better I'll become.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was interesting. The best compliment I got on some of my earlier work was that I was such a great storyteller, that despite maybe if there was some like syntax errors and that kind of stuff throughout, that they really enjoyed the story that I was telling. And that really helped me kind of continue with what I wanted to do. My first full-length novel was published in 2013, Summer's Hollow. It was my OG horror, that harkening back to the Puritan kind of witch trials, centering around a 16-year-old girl who finds an amulet in a barn in the middle of rural Pennsylvania, or rural Massachusetts. I don't know why Pennsylvania on the brain. And kind of things spiral from there. It turns into this paranormal haunted house, occult madness in this little small town of Summers Hollow. And that became a town that I lived in for a very long time. And I got to really learn more about my characters as I was writing. My main character was based off of me, because that was, you kind of write what you know kind of thing. And it kind of blossomed from there. My undergrad degree is in archaeology, and I don't use it at all in my current job, but I was able to use that knowledge that I learned in my books. So Riley, my main character, is an archaeologist in the later books, and she has a doctorate degree, and she is very into artifacts and learning about history, and kind of uses that as she keeps going back to her hometown and keeps finding more things about this ghost and these spirits that are there. I don't want to spoil anything because there's a lot of twists. I like twists. But it became a really fun journey that I took. And when in 2018, when I finished the series, it was almost like leaving like a family behind. It's like, oh, no, I'm done writing. And part of me still wants to go back to that town and write maybe, Riley, spoiler alert, but she has a daughter in the last book. It's not really a spoiler. It happens. And I would love to do a follow-on about her daughter. And so that's kind of one thing that I would eventually like to do.
It's almost like a revival.
Yeah. Sort of like
continuation.
Yeah.
So is Summers Hollow like a real town, or is it based off of a town?
It is a fictional town. All my towns are fictional, just because I don't want to piss off anyone. And it was based off of, I've read a lot of Stephen King, and it took place in a lot of these Massachusetts towns. And that kind of was the genesis for Summers Hollow. And yeah, I can't remember where I came up with the title of the town. It just maybe was like a little bit of my Gilmore Girls like obsession when I was younger. And Stars Hollow.
I was gonna say I was thinking Stars Hollow every time you said Summer Hollow.
I really like
Sleepy Hollow, but
yeah, and Sleepy Hollow. I really like giving very innocent titles to my books and then having them be not innocent at all. And you see that in my new book that's coming out, as well as I love kind of flipping the script a little bit on what you think you're going to get out of some of my books. I would say my favorite book to write, which actually was a little harder to market, is called Foreign Thoughts. It came out in 2018, and it's more of a paranormal mystery than really horror. And it's about a federal marshal who lives in, once again, a small town of Lodestar, Maryland. I'm from Maryland, so I really wanted to write a Maryland story. The seaside town. I was really into the show Haven, and it kind of inspired kind of foreign thoughts and how it kind of progressed. I wrote her as this very introverted character that hated people. The whole thing is that whenever she touches objects from other people, she's in their memories, whether it's bad memories, good memories. They are serial killers or rapists. She's just very effed up in the brain because of that. I'm not sure if you can curse on this podcast, but
Oh yeah, no, you totally can.
I curse a lot.
Yeah.
But that was the most fun that I had, was writing that book. And it saddens me that it didn't sell as well. And part of me really wants to revive it somehow and kind of maybe re-release it or something, because it was a lot of fun to write. And to write a character who's the opposite of me. I'm very extroverted. And to write someone who was so internal to themselves really was a stretch for me and kind of a challenge in a way. So I really, like I said, enjoyed writing that book. And then when I did take a foray into writing my first like full-on lesbian romance, it was called The Scarlet Latte, and it was a short. Like I said, I really love writing shorts more than I like writing like long-form novels. And that one was really fun to write because I got to kind of twist the genre a little bit. It was also almost my practice of writing romance and erotica because it wasn't really my strength, and I wanted to try my hardest to see if I could get that done. And I was able to do so. I either loved it or hated it. A lot of people went into it thinking it was this lesbian romance, and then there was a whole bunch of monsters and blood and gore at the end. And people were like, what the fuck was that? I got a 2-star rating on Amazon. It was the best 2-star rating I had ever gotten because it did exactly what I wanted it to. This woman said it was this beautiful lesbian romance, and then it suddenly became bloody. And yes, that's what it was. And I really enjoyed writing it. And I love getting low reviews on Amazon that do just that kind of validate that I'm doing what I want to write. And that's why I like self-publishing as well, because I can write what I want. I'm not bound by deadlines or trying to appease some publicist or something like that. I get to really dive into what I want to write. And sometimes that is very out there.
So you get more satisfaction like writing a full novel or short stories?
Probably short stories, honestly. My novels tend to be shorter. My newest one that's coming out this week is actually only about 130 pages. I like that. I love jumping right into the action without much explanation, and you kind of learn as you go. I feel like a lot of horror movies are like that, you don't have a lot of time. A lot of things that I don't like about some of the horror books that are out there is because they are so long, like 500 pages. I don't want to read a 500-page book. I would rather read a 250, 350-page book and really get to know the characters, get into the action, and not have all the fluff. And that's what I kind of try to not do a lot of, is the fluff.
Oh, good.
Cool.
So how did self-publishing work out for you? Like it's kind of hard for new writers to get into publishing. Sorry. Sorry. So how did the self-publishing, like where did you go to self-publish, for like all the kiddies that are like listening and want to get published and they don't think the traditional route would help them? What are the steps that you did to do the whole self-publishing?
So I will start out by saying it's very hard and it requires a lot of money up front to do it. And thankfully I had a full-time job that I had the money. This was before kids, so I had some extra to kind of throw around. The first thing that I did was start my own publishing company as a DBA, doing business as, so that I could buy my own ISBN numbers, buy things with that company's name versus just my name. I think that helped kind of give me a little bit more like legitimacy to what I was doing. And it wasn't just, say I'm going out and publishing. It was Behind the Curtain Publications that was doing this publishing. It was a lot of figuring things out by myself. Thankfully, as much as I had a love-hate relationship with Amazon is really the main way that I sell my books. They have a lot of great tools for self-published authors. You just need to know how to use them. And it was a lot of trial and error. Like I talked about The Cell being my first one. That was like my pet project. It was seeing if I really could publish something and how I could do it in a way that actually got to people. And so that's really the hardest part about self-publishing. I always say writing is the easiest part. It really is. It's the editing, the formatting, and all those pieces, and the publishing and the marketing that is the hardest. And I think that's the hardest part that I have as a self-published author is that marketing piece of it, which is why I love coming on podcasts. I love going to different conventions and doing, a lot of meet and greet kind of things with other authors to learn how they are selling their things so that I can be better at selling my own books. But it is a struggle. And I would say that be ready to fail. Like I talked about some of my books just being flops, that I really enjoyed writing them and they just didn't hit the market. And maybe if I had gone the normal route and had a publisher who could help me kind of market to the right people and do the right things, maybe it would have sold better. But I also have a full-time job. I have 2 kids. And so going that traditional route doesn't really work for me right now. Maybe when I'm older and, the kids are older, I could kind of resell some of my stuff to publishers and get them kind of out there. That's what a lot of my author friends actually are doing now, is kind of re-releasing some of their older things with these bigger publishing houses. But yeah, my biggest advice to everyone who tries the self-publishing route is just be ready to fail.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
Totally fair.
Do you ladies have any other questions for Sam?
So writing with kids, like how was that? How was that? Like with the little ones coming in, mommy, 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 and then go away, and you're like, so how's that? Like,
Struggle.
because I know some writers, they deal with family differently. Like Stephen King, I remember him saying, once I'm in my room and the door's closed, my family knew that I'm in my writing room.
Yeah.
But for people who don't have a writing room, how do you deal with the whole family writing balance?
I think for me, it was embracing the chaos of it all. So I was actually rereading some of my old things. I like to handwrite in notebooks. And I noticed, I found some old stuff my daughter had doodled all over. And so, which meant she was sitting next to me as I was writing and she was doodling on my pages. And she's 8 now. And I think at the time she was 5 or something, rereading some of these old stories. And it really is just embracing the chaos, embracing the fact that a lot of my writing now is more based off of not necessarily my life, but kind of my experiences. My character's more mature, they have kids, or they're in that space. Whereas my earlier stuff is a lot more about, the characters themselves, not necessarily their families. So I'm seeing a lot more family dynamics in my books. And like I said, I just had to embrace that. Trying to find the time to write, that's the hard part. So I was for an example, right now, my husband is locked in our bedroom with the kids, so they're out of ear range. So you guys aren't hearing the three babbling around. And that's kind of what I have to do sometimes, is my husband will take me to the park or go do other things while I try to get my writing done, because you do need that silence to really kind of think through things. I also have borderline insomnia, so I tend to write a lot at night when everybody else is asleep. So that
we're all insomniacs here. It's all right.
Yeah, nighttime writing is the best time writing.
And I think my best writing is 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. is when I get my best writing done. This is when I watch the best horror movies. Is 4 a.m. to 6 a.m.
Oh yeah, definitely. The second best time to watch horror movies is while you're baking.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what it is, but every time I'm baking, some type of horror movie is on, and my family does not understand it. They're like, "You're doing something wholesome, but you're watching that?"
Yeah, it's like when I, crochet, I'm sitting there, stab, look that's around, pull out, stab again. So yeah, my sister was like, oh, okay, at least she's doing something while she's watching horror movies.
That's funny. So my daughter is 8 and she is getting into horror now. Obviously somewhat age appropriate. I'm not the great litmus test for what you should or shouldn't show your kids. So if you're listening to this, don't listen to what I'm doing with my kids.
We've all watched horrible things way too early, so it's
exactly.
okay.
I was 4.
No judgment here.
I was rightfully so obsessed with Chucky when I was a kid. It was the 90s. And because of that, my child is very much obsessed with Chucky and Tiffany. She's been Tiffany for Halloween. My son has been Chucky. She has all kind of little like Funko Pops and keychains of Chucky that her teachers are like, what are you doing? Like, what is this?
It's Chucky.
It's Chucky. And also she recently got into like the Annabelle movies. Some of them were a little bit, she's like, maybe I should take a break. I'm good with like kids dying and that kind of stuff. So she knows her limits. But she's always trying to ask me like, oh, can I watch this with you? And it's like something awful. I was like, no, you don't need to watch this one.
Not
you don't need
yet.
to watch stuff. Yeah. I recently watched the movie Stop Motion. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that. It's very out there and like grotesque. And I was like, yeah, you don't need to watch this movie.
Hey, my oldest niece is like reading Uzumaki. She has to read it like in chapters because she's like, okay, even though it's really good and disturbing, I have to read it in chapters, Auntie Karen. I'll be back for it. And it'll be, like I said, it'll be our secret. Just come on downstairs and read it if you want to. She's like, okay.
So when it comes to actually like horror movies and shows and literature, what are some of like your favorites that you've been inspired by or just kind of like almost like comfort ones that you end up like consuming consistently?
So I think for horror movies, I love the whole, obviously the final girl trope, but I also love the like revenge girl trope. So Jennifer's Body is my comfort movie. It will always be my comfort movie. It's what I watch on planes because I have really bad travel anxiety. And I have to warn whoever I'm sitting next to if I don't know them, like, hey, I'm going to watch this really ridiculous horror movie. Like, look away if you don't want that. And then if they ever say anything, I'm like, or I could have a panic attack. So, just pick one.
Which one do you want?
Exactly. That Ginger Snaps is another one that I really like, which one revenge, wronged woman coming back and being a monster kind of thing. All Cheerleaders Die. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that one. Another great one. Yeah, it's one of my favorite. I love a lot of like indie horror too. And then I'm a sucker for found footage. I don't know what it is about found footage movies, but I will watch the worst ones that are out there and love them. Lake Mungo is my favorite out of all the found footage movies. It's an Australian horror film, if you guys have seen it. And
that's a good one.
That is my comfort film. So that and Jennifer's Body are ones that I keep going back to. But really, I love all, like, there isn't a lot of horror that I don't like. I'm very mood-based too. So lately, I'm really into slashers. It's, getting to be summertime. So rewatching a lot of, Friday the 13th, Sleepaway Camp, a lot of, like earlier, like 70s, 80s slashers, reading a lot of slasher books. I love Stephen Graham Jones. Like, I love all of his J. Daniels Indian Lake series. And getting more into like the indigenous horror and Mexican horror a lot lately. Those have kind of become my comfort. And a lot of my friends, obviously, that are in the horror genre, I love reading their books as well. Haley Piper, especially. She is a trans writer, and she writes these very thick horror books that are extremely out there and really talk about the trans experience a lot and how it kind of goes hand in hand with horror. And she's one that does a lot of great crime mixed with horror books. And I really, really dig them a lot. And then obviously I'm a huge Stephen King fan. I mean, I feel like every horror nerd is a Stephen King fan, for better or for worse. And
we've brought him up quite a bit. So
The Shining is one of my comfort books, as well as Salem's Lot. Those are probably two that I really enjoy a lot.
Which, isn't that supposed to come out as like a TV show?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, same.
Well, here's the thing. Is Mike Flanagan doing it?
No.
That one. He's doing something else, though.
Yeah.
They talked about doing Dark Tower, I think.
Yeah, I think he's doing Dark Tower. Have you read Things We Lost in the Fire?
Yes.
Isn't that such a good book?
It's a good book. Yeah, I will say I also do really love thriller books. I know it's not necessarily horror, but I love a good, like, we're like missing woman in the woods kind of thing. I read Jackal. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of that book. And it talks, it's really, really well done. Really awful. Just think about all these little Black girls that are going missing in the woods and why they're going missing. But I really like that kind of, once again, horror thriller genre, especially when it comes to like people missing, which sounds kind of awful when you say it out loud, but it's that trope that I kind of keep coming back to.
I totally understand 100%. I'm all into the profiling and all that kind of stuff too. So.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, like we talked about in our What is Horror podcast episode, a lot of that's blurred lines. It's very much like on a perspective deal of whether or not it crosses into something that is horrific. And so I put like I had mentioned in that episode, the movie Red Eye with Rachel McAdams. And I'm like, yeah, I know it's kind of like a thriller adventure movie, but as a woman, that is a horrific movie for me.
Yeah.
And especially if you have like a fear of flying and anything like that, like that is not a easy movie to watch for some people. Which I just found out it was directed by Wes Craven, I think.
Yeah.
So it's horror.
I love the marketing on that film. Like they marketed it as a like almost like a romantic comedy, kind of like the way that they marketed it. Like it was a meet cute kind of thing, and then it was not.
It was anything but that.
But I love that when people market things as one thing and it's the other. And I think Barbarian was a good example of that too. How it just like turned itself completely on its head, and I really enjoyed that film.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed that movie. That was a good movie.
Even the movie You're Next, they kind of did that at the beginning. Like the beginning, obviously minus that one very like short scene at the very beginning. But when you meet like the main character, you know, from that point on, you're like, oh, this is going to be a cute, like romantic, whatever. And then like people are going down like flies by mercenaries. Like, yeah. What are some shows that you like comfort shows?
Comfort shows. Probably the biggest example is Hannibal. Like I said, I love body horror, and Hannibal is very much body horror. I love the actors that are in that. So I'm a huge Broadway fan. So Raul Esparza, who plays Dr. Frederick, and it is my favorite role of his. He can be I think he's in Galileo now doing Broadway stuff, and I will still remember him as Dr. Frederick in Hannibal. That show is so beautiful. Even my husband talks about how gorgeous the shots are, and it's very relaxing almost as he's slicing up people and feeding them to other people.
The cinematography is really good on that one.
It's so good, and just the actors, and obviously it's very queer too. That's kind of my brand of queer horror. So that's one show that I keep going back to a lot. Haven is another one, really not horror, but it was based off of a Stephen King short story, The Colorado Kid. And I really loved the world building that they did within Haven. And it's another one of my comfort shows that I keep going back to. I've been recently watching Them. I'm not sure if you guys have watched them at all. It is hard to watch, to be honest. It is very hard hitting, given that it's Jim Crow era and it's just like a lot going on with that. But it's really, really well done. And I'm enjoying it. But it's not one that I can like binge watch. It's like, let me watch this and then go watch Parks and Rec to kind of decompress a little bit from this. And then also From was one that I really enjoyed recently. Once again, I like contained horror, if that makes sense. Like where it's just like one spot and they're not going off at all these other areas, because you could get a lot of good character development. And I have that a lot in my own writing, is that my characters never really travel much. They're just kind of contained in a cabin in the woods, like my newest book, or in a small town, or in a lighthouse, or whatever it may be. You can get a lot more out of characters that way than if they're like, running all around the country or, going to all these other places.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think it is time for the electric chair. Okay, I kind of get excited about the electric chair.
She does.
I'm only slightly terrified. It's good.
I have a feeling you'll survive. Most people do, so it's not a big deal. So, first question. I feel like it's a fun, easy question. Start you off a little on the softer side. Who's your favorite horror villain?
Probably Sam from Trick or Treat. Not just because that's my name, but I loved the concept of him. Trick or Treat is one of my favorite. It is my favorite anthology film that's out there, and it was just so well done. And I loved the continuity of him through each kind of story, and how at the end he's just unhinged, but then just goes back to being basically a little kid at the end and eating his lollipop as he's walking down the street. And I have a lot of Sam iconography in my house. I have a little crocheted Sam, and I have a T-shirt, and is my want one day to get him tattooed on me somewhere. So I would definitely say he's my favorite.
This is a Sam Stan account. So, because Lisa, she even dresses up as him. She has a costume.
Got the right size for him, and I dress up.
Oh.
My son bought me the costume, and then he goes, "I am so sorry I ever did that. Now you're freaking."
Yeah, that's my son dressed up for Halloween this past year. He was Sam for his like trick or treat. My kids always have like two costumes, like the appropriate one for school and then the horror one.
Makes sense.
Definitely makes sense. All right, so this one is Kiss, Marry, Kill, the horror edition. So the characters that you get to choose from are the Master from Buffy, Annie Wilkes from Misery, or Ghostface from Scream.
That's a hard one.
I know, I made it difficult.
I think I have to go with Kiss Ghostface.
Okay.
I think fuck Annie, just because I feel like she'd be a good fuck. She's got a lot of pent up stuff going on. And then marry the Master, because I feel like he gets things done. I think he'd be a good husband. I mean, I can keep him under wraps a little bit, but you know.
There we go. All right, and then the final question for the electric chair. This is going to be the one that decides whether or not you survive. You're hosting a horror dinner party. Who are the 6 people that you've invited to sit at the dinner table with you?
So I think I'm going to mix things a little bit up here and not going to really go with any one genre or even like art form.
Okay.
Because I would definitely, one of my top people that I would want to have at a dinner party is Stephen Graham Jones. Said he's one of my favorite horror writers. I would love to have him at my dinner party. But also love John Carpenter to be there because we love a good horror director.
Yeah.
Also James Wan, because I am obsessed with Malignant and I just want to get in that man's brain. Conjuring aren't my favorite films, but Malignant could have been something. It really could have been something. So I'd love to have him at a dinner party. I also would love Jennifer for Jennifer's Body, like that character to also be at my dinner party. I feel like she'd be a fun time.
She would definitely make it interesting for the guys.
Exactly. Yeah. In the same vein, I got to go with Ginger because Ginger Snaps again I love a good revenge, and I feel like she also would be good. I don't think she'd be very mannerly at the table, given the whole werewolf thing. But I think she'd be once again a good time. And obviously Stephen King. Like I feel like everybody has to have him at a dinner party. I feel like he's just kind of there. He kind of provides like the in-between talk as we all kind of talk about other things going on. So definitely have to throw him in there. Who else?
Wait, I think that's 6. Yeah, that's 6.
Is it?
I can't count. I'm a writer. I'm not good at math.
Which was an author.
Because you had Carpenter, Wong.
Yeah, that's 6.
Jennifer, Ginger, Stephen
King, and your first one. Yes, Stephen.
Stephen Graham Jones.
Yeah.
It is. Okay. Like I said, don't ask me to do math.
I don't think any of us are math savvy. So I say that you have survived the electric chair.
I realized I messed up the fuck, marry, kill once. I didn't kill anyone.
So that's brutal.
If you did have to kill somebody though, who would it be?
Probably Annie. I feel like I would fuck her and then kill her. Like I feel like she's not a good one to have around.
Because if you fucked her, she'd stay around. She has that like obsessive tendency, stage 5 clinger.
But what did you say with Ghostface? Did you say you would kill him or would you marry him?
I was like, that's a hard one.
But which Ghostface?
I'm a brutal person.
You're a Scorpio. That's okay.
Like original, like for like
Stu and Skeet.
Like Stu and Steve, yeah. We don't. I mean, I enjoy the new ones, but I'm like
Matthew and Skeet, man.
My Ghostface.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Matthew Lillard will always be one of the reasons that I'm not like fully gay. Because of a few other men there, and my husband.
Obviously, and your husband's an absolute doll, so
he's not as into horror as I am. He will watch some stuff with me, but he will walk away at a lot of like the grosser things that I watch.
Yeah, and that's fair. That is fair.
Yeah, my best friend, who actually Shannon knows, Demi, she is such a baby when it comes to horror movies, and I love watching horror with her because she has the best reactions. we flew to Vegas, and I made her watch Sinister because once again, I watch awful horror movies when I'm flying, and I kept taking her drink away from her as we watched it because otherwise she'd like throw it up and like get it all over me. She's fun to watch horror.
No, Demi's a sweetheart, though. I absolutely love her.
She's the Cancer that bounces out my Scorpio. So.
Yep. That is what she does. That is what she does. First of all, it was a pleasure to have you on here, Sam. Definitely enjoyed you. And we are going to be doing a few things here in the future that you might want to be part of, such as sleepaway camp, trick or treat.
My favorite.
So if you want to join us again, we're more than welcome, more than happy to help you or have you back on. All right, listeners, if you have any questions for Sam, please go to our social media, find our posts where you get to see her lovely book displayed, and pop some questions in there, and we will facilitate the answering of said questions, because we would love to continue this conversation. She's an amazing individual. We'd love for you guys to continue talking with her. You can join us on our social media, on Instagram, TikTok, X, Threads. Please join our Facebook group. We've been having a lot of fun in there. Tell us what your favorite horror novels are. And what would your dream cast be in a horror novel? We would love to hear. You can also subscribe, like, and rate us wherever you listen to podcasts like Apple, Google, Spotify. And we are on YouTube. Yay! But you can also follow all of us individually. Where can they find you, Sam?
So I have 2 accounts you can follow. One is at author Samantha Curtin on Instagram, and the other one is the Ginger Nerd. That's kind of my more fun account. It's horror related, and you also get some other fun stuff thrown in there. Also at Facebook as well, author Samantha Curtin, that you can follow there as well. I have left X for reasons that I don't really need to get into, but you can probably figure it out. But the best place to follow me is on Instagram. That's where all the fun happens.
Rock on. Lisa, where can they find you?
They can find me at Lisa Shin at Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Threads. And pretty much that's it right now.
Rock on. And Karen, where can they find you?
Anywhere and everywhere, Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. You see, I can't quit my Twitter. It will always be forever Twitter. And I had it since it first came out. And I'm like, I look at it, I'm like, I want to quit you, but I can't.
And I'm Shannon. You can find me on all the things at Spilled Tea Wine Media Mind. We want to just thank you all so much. Without you guys, we would not be here. So we really appreciate you, the listener, for joining us. And Sam, again, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and be on this podcast with us. We really do appreciate it.
For having me. It's been a fun time.
Yay. All right. So stay spooky, our lovely ghouls. Toodles.
Toodles.
Bye.